Hello, grade 8s, and welcome back to MV Tutors. We are done with whole numbers, and now we get to integers. Remember whole numbers? They're numbers starting from 0 all the way to positive infinity. All right? We are not considering decimals, we're not considering fractions as yet. We're just dealing with the numbers as they are. Now, what are integers? Integers are positive, 0, and negative numbers. So your positive integers are greater than 0. So basically we start all the way from 1 up until positive infinity. And negative integers are less than 0. Alright? So we go -1 all the way to negative infinity. Negative infinity being the smallest number. Okay, positive infinity being the biggest number. Now I know we've dealt with positive numbers. Negative numbers you shouldn't be scared of. Alright? So in real life, when do you have negative numbers? Well, basically, if you go to a bank to take out a loan, you end up with a negative balance until you have paid up the loan. Then you get to 0. All right. If you have a positive balance, it means you paid more than required. All right. So that's where you get negative numbers whenever you borrow money. Okay. And what other examples can we put there with negative numbers? Basically, it has to do with borrowing money. That's the main example I would give. Okay, in the context of money, sometimes we can look at temperature. So we know that the boiling point or boiling temperature of water is 100 degrees. That's a positive, and then freezing point of water is 0 degrees. And sometimes we can go below 0 degrees where it's really cold. Some places in some parts of the world have negative freezing temperatures. Okay. Another point where you can use negative values. So normally, sea level, we call that the 0 elevation. So 0 meters. Okay. Mountains are above the sea, so they would have a certain elevation. And then whenever you go below the sea level, you're actually in the negative values. Okay, so negative, 100 meters. That just means you are 100 meters below sea level. All right, so that's where the negatives come in. Sometimes maybe if you are playing a game and you keep getting penalized for doing wrong things, you end up on the negative side. If maybe you started at 0 and you keep getting penalized, you get negative values. Okay, so there are many examples actually, now that I think about it, that you can have negative numbers for. Or an elevator. Or I know we have a shopping complex nearby. So there's a 0 and then you have -1, -2. Normally your negative levels are where there's parking. So yeah, there's a lot of examples. So negative values do actually surround us in society. Okay, now we've talked defined integers. Let's have a look at some examples. All right. So exercise 2.1, it says fill in the missing values. We need to see what the trend is actually here. And by looking at the trend, we can then figure out what the next values are. So now from -24 to -20, what happened? Okay, let's say, another thing about this topic, it is actually quite good to have a number line, especially at the beginning when you're trying to make sense of this. So let's say you have -24, -23. Remember, -23 is higher than 24, -24. Okay, so let's just go this way and then see what happens. Let me just stop here. So from -24, how many steps did I have to take in order to get to -20? Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. And because I'm moving to the right, I'm adding. If I were moving to the left, I would be subtracting. So I'm basically adding 4 in order to go from -24 to -20. Okay, if you wanted to do the sum in itself, you would take this term, -20, and then subtract -24. So subtract -24. And we're going to learn that actually if you have a negative and a negative, so like we said, -20, minus, this minus and that minus are going to turn into a positive. So I'm actually saying minus 20 plus 24. Or it's like saying 24 minus 20. I'll be left with positive 4. Okay, that's another way of doing it. So now let us get back. So for me to go from negative 24 to negative 20, I added 4. All right, and let's continue then and see, how do I get to 16 or negative 16? How many steps did I take? 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, I added 4. So that just tells me then that I keep adding 4. And if I go from negative 16 and I add 4, what will I get? Okay, let me just draw another number line. Now going from negative 16, and when I add 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, I get to negative 12. So that's the next number. And then again, 1, 2, 3, 4, I get to negative 8. Okay, and from negative 8, adding 4, I'm going to get negative 4. Now, if I have negative 4 and I add 4 to it, I'm going to be left with 0. Okay, I hope you see that. And then if I add 4 to 4, no. I didn't write the 0. So negative 4 plus 4, I will get 0. And then from 0, if I add 4, I will get 4. Then 4 plus 4 would be 8, and 8 plus 4 would be 12. So we saw the trend there. How about going from 23 to 46? Okay, so I'm not going to draw a number line. I'm not going to finish here. Basically, I need to ask myself, if I take 46 and I subtract 23, what do I get? So 6 minus 3 is 3. 4 minus 2 is 2. So I need to add 23 in order to get to 46. Now, am I still going to use the same number? Let's see. If I take 46 and I add 23, will I get 69? Yes, I do. So on the second example, example B, or rather exercise, I need to add 23. So if I have 69 and I add 23, so 9 plus 3 is 12. 6 plus 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9. So then I get 92. And then if I say 92 and I add 23, 2 plus 3 is 5, 9 plus 2 is 11, then I get to 115. Okay, so we were able to fill in the missing values. Now it says, write down the number that must be added or subtracted to get the answer indicated on the right side. Now, what do I need to subtract in order to get 6? Okay, another way of doing this is by saying 14 minus 6. We actually did cover this in the whole number section, okay, where we have inverses. But basically, what do I need to subtract in order to get 6? So I'm basically going to say 14 minus 6, and I know that is 8. So if I say 14 minus 8, then I'm going to get 6. Now it says, what do I need to add to 7 in order to get negative 24? Then I ask myself, what is negative 24 minus 7? Okay, negative 24 minus 7. So basically, if I had a number line, and remember when we subtract, we go to the left. When we add, we go to the right. So I have minus 24, minus 25, minus 26, and I go on and on. You can actually use your calculator, but remember we want to understand this first before incorporating the calculator. Okay, minus 30, minus 31, lastly minus 32. I hope it fits. Okay, so now we have negative 24. This is where we're starting, and we're going to subtract 7, so we're going to go all the way to the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So our answer is actually negative 31. So basically, if I have negative 31 and I add 7, meaning if I started with negative 31 and I go 7, if I add 7, it means I'm going to the right. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I end up at negative 24. All right. I hope this is making sense. So now let's go to the next one. Let's get my blue pen over there. Okay, now from negative 24, how do I go all the way to negative 8? All right, so the fact that negative 24 is smaller than negative 8, it means I added something. And then if I add, it means I'm going to the right. Okay, so I added Therefore, I'm going to the right. So what do I need to add in order to end up with negative 8? Okay, so you can decide for yourself if you're going to draw a number line. It's going to take quite a while, but you got to do what you need to do in order to understand. So let's just say now I have negative 8 and I am subtracting negative 24. Okay, so this is the same as saying minus 8 plus, remember I said a negative and a negative give you a positive, so plus 24. And therefore, this is me saying 24 minus 8. Okay, if I swap things around. So 4 minus 8, I need to borrow 1. So 14 minus 8 is 6, and then I have 16 there. So basically, if I have negative 24 and I add 16, I'll get negative 8. And if you're not sure, please always check with the calculator. So you have negative 24. If I add positive 16, I'm left with negative 8. Use a calculator just to verify, all right? But you need to do these calculations by yourself. And now we get to the number line. I'm sure you've realized that it actually helps to do these calculations when you have a number line. So what is a number line? Basically, an arrow to the right, it's basically a number line where you have a line where you have numbers on it. And an arrow to the right represents positive, an arrow to the left represents a negative. Okay. And then using a number line, we need to calculate the following. Minus 2 plus minus 3. We will get to the rules of plus and negative together, negative and negative together. But for now, let's just say we have minus 2. So this is where we are starting. And we are adding negative 3. So if we're adding a negative 3, it's the same as saying minus 2 minus 3, because a positive and a negative give us a negative. So what is minus 2 minus 3? Basically, from negative 2, we're going to move to the left because we're subtracting. So if we subtract 3, 1, 2, 3, we get to negative 5. And then what is negative 2 plus minus 2? So plus and the minus will give us a minus. So we have negative 2 minus 2. That's going to give us, that's going to give us negative 4. Okay, because we started negative 2 and we subtract 2. So we have negative 4. And then what if we have 0 plus minus 5? So basically, the plus and the minus turn into a minus. So we have 0 minus 5. Okay, we're starting from 0 and we're going 5 units to the left. So 1, what am I doing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We land at negative 5. And then what if we have 3 minus minus 2? I hope you remember from the examples that I was doing that a minus and a minus actually give you a plus. So minus minus 2 actually turns into a plus. So 3 plus 2, that is easy. We don't even need the number line, but let's just say we have it there. We're adding 2, we're going to the right. So we're at 5. I hope it's clear now how to use a number line. But you guys are smart. You got this already. Now let's have a look at exercise 2.3. Alright, so we have negative 26 and we're adding 22. So these are huge numbers. I mean, you can go ahead and draw a number line. It'll be easy. Well, it's going to be tedious, but it'll be easy to see what's happening when you do that. But let's try a trick. So I see that I have a bigger negative number. 26 is bigger than 22, okay? But it's a negative 26. So actually, negative 26 is smaller than positive 22. But I just wanted to get just the number itself, 26, is bigger than 22. So what we can do, we can tell ourselves or ask ourselves, what is 26 minus 22? Okay, it's actually going to be 4. So then I know I have a huge negative number and I'm adding a smaller positive number. So my answer at the end has to be a negative. And because now I put a negative here by saying 26 minus 22, I know that it has to be a negative 4. Okay, I hope that didn't confuse you. But with negative numbers, if you're going to swap the operations around, like making 26 positive and the negative 22 the negative, then you need to remember that at the end, because you have a bigger negative number, your answer should be negative. Okay, let's try another example. So here we have 3 minus 6. That's easy. You can use a number line. All right, go there and say, okay, if I have 3, this is where 3 is, and I subtract 6, we'll go into the left. So it would be, let me use a different color. So then I have going 6 units to the left. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now I'm left with minus 3. All right, and I have minus 3 plus 22. Okay, so now minus 3 plus 22 is the same as saying 22 minus 3. All right, now 22 minus 3, if you work that out, it's going to give you 19. Okay, because you're going to do that. 12 minus 3 is 9, and then bring down the 1. Now the third exercise, number 3. So we have minus 5 plus 8 is the same as 8 minus 5. And we know that 8 minus 5 is 3. All right. So then we have 3 minus 6 plus 7. So we've already done 3 minus 6. We know that it's minus 3. So now I have minus 3 plus 7. So minus 3 plus 7, I'm going, if I have a number line, I'm going to the right. Okay, so minus 3, let's get a different colored pen. There we are, minus 3 plus 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then I'm left with 4. So basically minus 3 plus 7 is going to give us positive 4. Here are a few things to note when it comes to integers. All right, these are like your rules. And as we go through them, you'll start realizing that, okay, I actually knew this. So it's not as bad as I think. Okay, now an integer and its inverse is equal to 0. What does that mean? Basically, if you have an integer, let's say negative 3, and we add its inverse, which is a positive 3, we're basically going to get 0. Okay, try that with any number. Negative 100, we add 100. It's like you're taking away 100 and putting back 100. You're going to get 0. All right. Now, if you have a negative plus a negative, that will be equal to a negative. All right. So a negative number, negative 10, and you subtract another negative number. Okay. It's going to be an even bigger negative number. All right. So minus 10, that is equal to negative 20. Now, if you have a positive number, let's say 4, and you multiply by a positive number, that will give you a positive result. Okay, like positive 4 times positive 2, that is positive 8. If you have a positive number and you multiply by a negative number, let's put that in bracket so that you don't think it's negative minus 2. Sorry, it's multiplied, so 4 times and then minus 2. So that bracket there is put there just to say that we have an integer, we have a negative number. So we're still gonna get 4 times 2, which is 8. All right, but this negative over here will also remain. Okay, so a positive multiplied by a negative number, that's simply a negative number. Now what if we get a negative number and we multiply it by a negative number? All right, so a negative and a negative will give you a positive. Okay, and a 4 times 2 would be 8. Okay, so basically a negative times a negative number will give you a positive number. Okay, here we had a positive 4 multiplied by negative 2. So the positive and the negative give you a negative, and then you just go ahead and multiply the 4 and the 2. All right, now if you have a positive number, look at me saying positive and I'm writing negative. Positive number divided by a negative number. So basically, we have a positive divided by a negative, that will be negative, and then 4 divided by 2, that is simply 2. So a positive number divided by a negative number gives you a negative result. All right. And then the last two, a negative divided by a positive. So we have a negative number divided by a positive number. So the negative divided by the positive gives you negative. 4 divided by 2, that's just 2. And then a negative divided by a negative. So a negative and a negative will give you positive, and 4 divided by 2, that's just 2. So a negative divided by a negative gives you a positive. So in summary, when you are adding or subtracting, adding negative numbers will give you negative results. Okay, if you were to have 4 minus 2, remember negative and negative gives you positive. All right, so yeah, 2 negatives next to each other turn into a positive. 2 positives next to each other remain positive. A positive and a negative, well, if you're multiplying them, they'll give you a negative. A negative and a positive will give you a negative. I hope that makes sense, and I hope you have grasped it, because you're going to be seeing a lot of these kinds of calculations, and you need to be sure that you understand. Now let's use our understanding in order to do this exercise. You need to simplify the following. So minus 12 plus 6, remember I said if you don't want to use the number line, if the numbers are too big, you can simply say 12 minus 6, that will give you 6. But because we have a bigger negative number and we're adding a smaller positive number, your answer at the end has to be a negative. All right, and I didn't finish here. 12 minus 6 is 6, and your answer then will be a 6, but it will just be negative, okay, because you have more of the negative. All right, let's go back to the example of a loan. If you took out a loan and you have negative, let's say you're at 0 and you took out a loan of 12 Rand and you only paid 6 Rand, you still remain with 6 Rand to still pay off. So that's why it has to be a negative. Now we have a negative 12 times negative 6. So we said a negative multiplied by a negative is actually a positive. All right. So knowing all of that, negative 12 times negative 6 is positive. Now 12 times 6, this is your multiplication tables, that's 72. Okay, now here we have negative 12 times negative 4. All right, remember we can do this thing of grouping. We already discussed this in whole numbers. So I'm going to start with this first. So a negative times a negative gives me a positive. And what is 12 times 4? That is 48. And then I have a positive 48 multiplied by a negative 5. All right, so 48, so positive times negative will give me a negative. And what is 48 times 5? Well, you can use your calculator, but 8 times 5 is 40. 4 times 5 is 20 plus 4, that's 240. So at the end, I have negative 240. Okay, now, number 2a. What is 21 divided by 7? That's simply 3. Remember, we have a positive 21 divided by a positive 7. That's a positive 3. And then we have a positive 18 divided by negative 3. Okay, so positive divided by negative is simply a negative. And 18 divided by 3, that is 6. Okay, now negative divided by negative, that is a positive. Okay, and then 16 divided by 4, that is simply 4. So normally we don't really put the positive there, we just write the answer as it is. But when it comes to negative, you definitely have to put it there. Okay, and I think that marks the end of the exercises.